I know that we a couple of months ago we went through some of the top 5 interviews on Halftime Chat. We've had some new ones since then, and I have to sort of remove some from my top 5 just because they will always make my top 5 no matter who else. Even if I interview Barack Obama, I'll still have to pick my top, the 3 that I've done that I always have to pick, and I'll mention them later. But it'd be good just to see what I've always remembered you from back in a bit early beginning.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so I mean, who would make in your top 5? I don't think it's in any particular order unless you want to, but
Right. Well, it's been a very interesting, big, I don't know how long that period has been. I think it's been like what, 4 months since we did that. So
yeah.
yeah, I think it was about 4 months when we did that first episode. So yeah, it's been a lot going on in that time period. We've interviewed a lot, or you've interviewed a lot of people. One of my favorite, I'm gonna put at number 5, was KG. And KG
Oh,
shined a lot of light. I did not know a lot about, the behind the scenes of his artists like John A and the group he was in, Naughty by Nature and Next and Jaheim. So it was really interesting getting the backstory on that and how he achieved the label deals. And I never knew he was inspired by Michael Bivins, Biv 10. So there
mm,
was a lot of little interesting little nuggets of information that, I didn't know. So he was a good interview, very knowledgeable. One
okay.
of my favorite producers too. So
Yeah, and I think he got comfortable as we were going on, and probably appreciated that it wasn't all about. I didn't ask him about Trent, like because he's somewhat. I think he's doing some TV show, Hollywood Husbands, or one of
oh yeah,
those.
yeah.
Oh, so
hmm
he's
He's
not
always
as
been kind of doing acting stuff.
yeah, so he's not as committed to the naughty stuff. So it's him and Vinny. So never even brought him up. So I think there was an appreciation that okay, it was really about him and his stuff,
Right.
and he could shine there. And he was really enjoyed his how he just flowed and what he had to say, and especially with Coffee Brown and stuff like that. Okay,
Mhm.
it's always hard for me, so I can't add. So who's after who's next then? Yeah, I don't.
Well, you're next, right? Have you given your
Well, it's hard.
fifth?
Yeah, I mean, if
You want me to go next? 'Cause I can go
yeah, you
again.
just could keep going, then I'll contribute to.
So uh recently you spoke with Gina Thompson,
Okay.
and she I'm gonna affectionately call her a one-hit wonder because she did have one hit.
Okay.
Um, but there was so much story behind that one hit, like so much emotion and how she got there, and and what happened afterwards, and it was moving, and um she was very talented, and she was working with some of the biggest names in the industry, and through her fault of no her of through no fault of her own, through label politics and things, she just kept getting the short end of the stick.
Mm,
First album came out, then her label gets absorbed, and things go awry, and then she gets a second chance with another label, and then the album gets shelved, and everybody disappears, and she feels discarded. So that was something I could definitely relate to, putting so much hard work and right, on the second album she wrote a lot of the album, putting so
mm,
much creative energy into something that never sees the light of day, and you have nothing to show for your hard work. And so
yeah.
um that was that I think a lot of us can relate to that story. Whether it's you're working in a corporate world, you're
Yeah.
putting a lot of energy into project at work or whatever and
Yeah.
whatever. So it was, I was glad to see that she was able to open up about it in that way, because a lot of
Yeah.
times people walk away bitter, but she seems that she's come to a resolution with all of those emotions, and she's you know, um, ready to take on the next chapter in her life. Hopefully that includes new music, because I would love to hear her sing again.
Yeah, and one of the things about, so I learned one of my, if I say, biggest regrets since doing halftime chat was when I interviewed Pamela Long, and there
Mm,
was a point when I asked her favorite song, and she mentioned "The Lady in My Life," and that it reminds her of her mum, and she was getting emotional, and I didn't give her space to get emotional. I quickly jumped, "Oh yeah, Donnell likes the song too." Then I realized, what did
mm,
I've just done? And I went back to talk about her mum, and I always remember that, like, I should have just kept quiet, let her get emotional,
yeah,
let her just let's just see where that takes us to, and stay out, which is I normally do, but with that, I always
well, were
remember
you
that she,
uncomfortable with that? Like sometimes I can be uncomfortable with someone's emotions. Were
no,
you uncomfortable, or was it
no,
you
it
didn't
was
want to
because she
hurt you?
told me I only had 20 minutes, and so
Oh, oh,
in my back of my head it's like,
okay.
oh, she's gonna cut it off
Oh,
now, and this is the
yeah,
only time I've gone into interview with somebody's giving me a time, and so I kept thinking, I need to take as much as I can before she says this at the end. And I looked and I remembered that. And so when Gina, and I only say this because when Gina got emotional about how she felt after the label, she got dropped the final time, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna give us that. And normally I do that in the therapy room all the time when when one of my
yeah,
patients gets emotional. We're taught just be comfortable with the silence. Now I don't rush anything, and so I just given her the space, and not being
right.
uncomfortable with that. So, and because what happens is that if sometimes you may think, yeah, I'm over it, but when it can still trigger something in there. And
Mm,
if this was a therapy session, I probably would have asked her, "Oh, so what made you cry?" Just to really bring that out. But because it was not a therapy session, and I'm not going to contain it and hold it. I just let her. I just okay.
right.
And so to see that, I think for a lot of people who saw that, it was really powerful. Like, wow, this is serious. These are people's lives. This is stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that song from her back in the day, and I remember that. But after seeing her open up and now feeling that I can relate and
Mhm.
I share a similar experience, not with her, but I have a similar experience. She has a fan in me now because I'm like, well, I'm supporting you. I'm rooting for you to you know, uh, conquer this and get back out there.
Yeah.
I don't feel like anybody's too old or, nothing's too late.
Mm.
You have plenty of time. So good luck to you, Gina.
Gina,
So in the
namaste.
same vein, I no, well, this next person is somebody I've always been a fan of and kind of silently rooting for too because they were the underdog in their group. Mr. Dalvin from Jodeci.
Okay.
And I love that interview because I think I felt like he felt like the cool uncle that he just had a cool, just he felt relatable in that interview. I've never seen him that relatable. So, and he just kind of told you matter of factly, he just answered. He didn't, seem too guarded. Um, and we learned some things in that interview, so I'm just a fan of Mr. Dalvin, so I was happy to see him. I was really happy to hear his new music. So
Yeah, and and with Dalvin, I mean, I reached out to him. He says, "Okay, get in touch with my assistant," and she was arranging everything. And then he was, because he was coming up with his own music, and he had studio time, so he kept rescheduling. And then when we finally got it, she was, and the assistant was telling me beforehand, look, it, based on other interviews where it was very much about his brother and about the group and about Jodeci and not about him. In a way, it doesn't. He doesn't. It's not really that good. So what can you do differently? And I said, look, this is what we do, is to talk about them. And and I think she said he really one of the best interviews that he's had, because it was very much
mm,
about him and not about
right,
Casey and all about JoJo. It was really a lot about him and his experience, and the fact that he says that his brother. And I used this when I had to talk about mental health to 240 students in the last week, And I didn't mention Dalvin, but I mentioned, well, one artist that I spoke about how he was inspired. His brother told him, stop playing basketball. You're not going to get paid for playing basketball. Put that energy into something that could pay. You can pay. You could have a career from. And he remembered putting all his energy in the production, and look what he's done now. And
Right.
and that sense of how his brother, he looks up to his brother, because I don't know if we get that. I don't know. Maybe we see it other ways, but I got a way that he really looks up to his brother. He really admires his brother. His brother's always looked after him. And I don't know if I'd seen or known about that from other places. I just didn't, I used to think
Right.
that he was upset with his brother for not letting him do more production. And he was saying his brother always pushed him to do better and to do more. So I appreciated how he opened up, and he didn't feel he didn't need to be guarded and stuff.
Okay. The next person I would like to mention is Brian Abrams, who just finished recently, and
Oh,
he's another one that had a lot of relatable elements to his story, and he introduced a lot of details we didn't know about his time with Color Me Bad, and but some of the same stories about not making much money like everybody else at that time. But it was cool to see him and see what he's up to. And like I said, he was one of those singers, and that was one of the groups that I really liked when I was younger. So it was good to see him. And so
he took me out of my comfort, my element, because I always had a rule that I would not be in the show. I'm there asking the questions, and that's it. I might as well be behind the camera. But there was something about hearing his story that I, for the first time, became therapist Nnamdi, and I was there talking about, um, talking about sort of trauma and why it affects his drinking and stuff, and I'm almost thinking that, and really becoming to analyze it. Look, if I was treating you, I wouldn't focus on the addiction, but I'd focus on what you're trying to block out in your mind. And let's go back and revisit those early days of when you said you saw your father being shot, and back and being killed, and all any type of abuse that you might have seen or experienced, and how that in itself has been plagued on you. you know you, because I couldn't realize how slim and he was when he was younger, when he came out, and then how big he had become. I didn't know about the incidents where he, pushing Mark, and the whole drugs and stuff, because I wasn't watching it on TV, or seeing it until the interview. And I looked back and saw him on Dr. Phil and all that stuff. And I'm like, wow, what happened? So and I realized, actually, after that, I thought, if the opportunity in any future interviews arise for me to be able to bring my therapist skills, that I won't hide from it. I will
right.
get involved. So that he was, I really appreciate him for that.
That's why I like those kind of interviews like this one, or like Brian's and Gina's, because it's an opportunity to share a story that could also help someone else heal that has had
Mm.
some of the same, you know, um, affliction, or obstacles.
Yeah.
Finally, I was so excited for this interview, and when I got off the phone with his people, I was like, "Oh my God!" I was screaming. I was so happy. This guy has been a major staple. Like, he's been a pioneer in the broadcast world. Donnie Simpson. Donnie Simpson is so full of energy and charisma. He's just, you can't. He's, even at his age now, he's just unstoppable. That man, I'm willing to give him a show. Like, what can I cast him in? Like, he's just, he's unbelievable. And when he gave you those props, like, he was telling you how much he admired you, and I was just like, oh, that must have felt so great as being an interviewer, fellow interviewer. So, what were your
There's
thoughts on that interview?
Donnie Simpson and there's Larry King, to me, who were the
Yes.
ultimate interview host, because Larry King always didn't try and catch his guest out. He wasn't that type of an interviewer. He would just and you'd see Prince, anyone coming on his show and feeling safe. Donnie was that one, especially for new artists. If you saw a Shy Mary J. Blige, a Jodeci, or
Yes.
SWV, didn't matter who they are, he would sit down and just be like, "Hey, so what's going on?" And when he said that, his production team would say, "Okay, here's the script for the interview. Yeah, that's fine," and he'll rip it up and just sit down and have a conversation. And the next question was based on what they've just said. And I was like, and I'm just like, you don't know that when I started to go to most of my interviews, I quickly look at Wikipedia 5 minutes before we start to say, okay, when did the album come out, just in case it comes up. And that's a much,
Yeah.
because the more you know, the more it becomes.
You stop being inquisitive.
Yeah. So I posted something recently with Cassandra Lucas from Chain of Faces. She said, "Are all your interviews this long? We've been here an hour and a half. I didn't realize how time went." And I said, "Because I just asked you a question."
Yeah.
I think, and I learned that from Donnie, and because he didn't read a teleprompter is pretty much here's the next video, but he would just sit down. "How's it been? We haven't seen in a while. What's going on? How's the new
Right.
music?" And in a way, you're feeling comfortable. He's not going to trick you or anything like that. And and I love the fact that I learned from him is that he was dropping names. Oh yes, so yeah, Sugar Ray Leonard, yep, and Stevie, and yep,
Yes.
Anita Baker. And I was thinking, it's something that you learn because you're trying to say, look, these are people who have become my friends because I met up with them. So now I could say yes. Yesterday evening, after I was speaking to Moke and Steph, I got a message from Eric Williams just asking me to
Yeah.
check something else out, and I could call him back. And Mucho sent me a text the other day. So, and I can bring them up because of what I've learned from, say, Donnie, where you just become a friend, where you're not just.
Yeah.
So you still have that relationship where, and he was just showing that, look, he's been able to develop that because of how they've seen he's just a guy who just wanted to know this stuff. He went to journalism school,
Yes.
but he doesn't apply all that. So he was, I think, I
He's
don't
just a
know.
classy guy.
Yeah.
He's a classy guy. He's full of charisma and people trust him. See,
Yeah.
people have to trust you, then they can open up and they can tell you those things, tell you what you want to know. And it might be a difficult subject or something, but if you're talking to the right person and they're respectful, they can get that out of you. They can get, that conversation out of you. And that's something, Donnie Simpson, you know he's just got a way about him. He's got skills. And like I said, you didn't well, you probably did know because you have watched him for years, but you do a lot of things that he's done too. So it's we've all kind of had him as a uh you know I guess a musical godfather or something, because like for me, he introduced me to all these artists.
Yeah.
When I was young, I literally ran home after school, and either caught, well, it didn't come on after school, but it was, video sold at some point during the day.
Yeah.
Like in the
Yeah.
evening. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was just like a important moment of the night for
The
me.
one thing he did say that was very powerful to me was the fact that he doesn't listen to no lyrics. He knows the song, he knows the music, but he's not a connoisseur. He's not a. He can't say, yeah, this is one of. He knows a
That's me.
song. So, but no, I mean, you know a lot. I mean, if it was back in the day, anything Teddy Riley, I could tell you, I could hear a string and say, oh, that was Teddy. But in
Mhm.
general, I
Oh, you mean that? Okay.
so
He's not
he said he's not he's a DJ, but he's not one of those people that would just go through that's the
memorizing, like,
doesn't know.
yeah.
You say he doesn't hear the lyrics as well and stuff like that, so he just flows with it. So it was refreshing to know that he wasn't, as much as he's been around the music, he's not like a music encyclopedia like that, and stuff, and that's the thing that was the thing that just made me feel comfortable that, okay, I don't necessarily need to really be able to, because I know some other guys who we listen to who have great podcast shows who know the music well, and they
Yeah.
could say, yeah, so you work with this producer and you know this, and I'm like, man, this is really good. I'm the you know Back in the '90s you couldn't touch me when it came to stuff like that, but I've been out of the
Yeah. It's
game
a
for
different
such a
time.
long time that I'm
Yeah.
not like that, so I can't. Then if I read too much and focus too much on the producers and the writers and stuff, I lose myself and I lose what the end
Yeah.
users is. And when Donnie says, look, he just focuses on them, you notice that the people who have comfortable with me, because I do what Donnie was doing, was just talking about them and the music. Yeah, that's just part of you, but not you. And you
Right.
sell yourself and not the music, and people love you and they'll love your music. If you start coming here to sell your music, it's like, well, why do we want to buy this music? We don't even know who you are. So that, yeah, Donnie, I appreciate the hookup with Donnie. He did call me Omar once or twice, because
Ah, how
but
embarrassing.
yeah, no, but the thing is, and the strange thing is
I'm
when he
talking about for
did,
him because I would hate to call somebody the wrong name.
yeah, and the thing is that when he was doing it, I didn't know how to like do I didn't, because he was in mid flow and stuff, and I didn't know how to stop. And so that's something I've had to learn, and I should have asked him to. When
Yeah.
should I have said
Yeah.
something about that? But yeah, that was been a blessing for me, and to be able to to have him there, and he was humble to say he was excited and stuff. I'm thinking, why are you are you sure you're in the wrong show? Yeah. But you
All
know what?
right.
To everybody, if the people, if everyone ever asks me about my top five, the reason why it's hard, because I always would go back to Father MC, because he was the first
Yes,
person to give
Father
me
MC.
an interview. Timmy Gatlin, because never understood why there's one guy in the picture on the album and he was not in the videos, so I didn't understand his story. So to be able to have a good 2 hours with him was amazing. And Nitty Green from Rift. The reason when I interviewed him, he was the first person to he was complimenting me from. I was like, man, that's a
Mm,
good question. And he was like, man, I love the way you ask. And all of a sudden, I felt relaxed, like, wow, okay, I'm not doing such a bad job, because he kept
right.
stopping complimenting. I felt like I was talking to a new friend. I was like, oh, we're gonna be good best buddies.
He got a
So
lot of energy. I remember him.
yeah, so my first interview with him, it would always go down, because I just felt he made me feel was relaxed and stuff. Um, Dawn Robinson, I knew she had long interviews, and I thought, okay, I'm going to keep it to an hour, because we had 2.5 hours. But sometimes I look back at the interview and think, oh, I kind of it was a little presumptuous in a lot of things, but she was she started calling me Nnamdi, no, and she knew, once she knew my name, she was calling me throughout the interview, and it was almost like two friends having a discussion, and so I always remember that. And then the family one was always be Tammy Lucas. If
Oh yes,
I've
yes.
never been starstruck, but I was looking, is it recording? Okay, is she really sitting in front of me? I forgot anything that she had done, because I couldn't. I was just thinking, I've only seen her fleetingly in an old video. I think New Jack Swing Forever or something like that. They had of of they interviewed her, but it was maybe 15, 20 years ago, or maybe 20, 30 years ago. But you'd have to search to find it. But I've
Right. I
never
didn't know she
really.
had a music video. I
No,
didn't know
no,
she
no,
even
no,
had it.
an interview.
Well, I thought because I came across a music video. I thought of her.
Yeah,
Could be
that
wrong.
the one she did outside of her and Teddy.
Oh wait, no, no. I'm thinking. I'm thinking. You know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about a live performance she did. Never
Yeah,
mind.
yeah,
But yeah, she was a mystery. I've never seen
she
her
doesn't have
in.
pictures anyway. You hardly see a
Um,
picture of her. And then she
shame
says,
on you, Teddy. You should have pushed that artist.
yeah,
It's almost like you're trying to hide her.
she said,
Keep her for yourself.
yeah. So she said, yeah, we can interview, and then on the day she interviewed was her birthday. I'm thinking, and I thought it was not going to happen. You guys don't understand. When I have an interview scheduled, and I'm sitting here, and the time is 10 o'clock in the UK, and the person hasn't joined, I'm like, okay, because I've had people not show up. So that's where the nerves come. And I didn't expect her to log in like and stuff. So, guys, 2022 is probably going to be even better than 2021 and 2020. So hopefully we'll do this again towards halfway through the summer, just to look back and see the best 5 of 2022, because there's some really exciting ones coming through the doors. And yeah, but anyway,
Yes,
comments
and
and
make sure,
feedbacks.
yes, let us know your favorite 5 interviews that have taken place on Halftime Chat. Let us know some of your suggestions if you have anybody you would like to see interviewed as well. And we will catch you on the next episode. Thank you again. Have a great night.
Okay. All right.